Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be talking about why silver may not be for you. Here are going to be some main cons of silver, reasons that maybe it's overvalued. I personally have about 4 or 5% of my investments tied up in silver, which is a really high percentage. I don't know if I would recommend that for anybody, but I am not giving any investment advice. This is purely for entertainment. But I've thought about some of these reasons. I always think it's good to sort of check why you're investing, and let's think through some of the major drawbacks of purchasing silver right after the intro. So I'm going to not make this longer than it needs to be. The first one is going to be the potential to be robbed, because since so many people are involved on the physical silver side, I think it's much more enjoyable to do that. It's like physical ownership of something that's valuable. It's fun to pick up and show you in this video, with the silver that I am in possession of. But a lot of people can have their silver or other precious metals stolen, especially when they go for the physical possession, which I sort of recommend. I think a lot of people have issues with the paper silver. That's not something that I feel super worried about in terms of if there's like a bunch of scams going on or it's like a big Ponzi scheme with the silver, a lot of manipulation. But I know that that's a concern for a lot of people who are interested in silver and are in the silver community. But there is always that probability of either paying for physical storage somewhere, and that's going to cost you, or the downside of having it taken off of you and the potential to put in jeopardy your physical health and security as a result of you owning the silver. It's also, this one's always an interesting silver piece. It's from a wedding, but the whole point is that it's not generating cash. So it's sitting right in front of me. I could sell it. For some of this stuff, I could sell for more than I paid for it. Others of these, I think I paid for these like at when silver was like 29 an ounce. So, I think a lot of people on YouTube are always talking about how much they've made off of silver. In reality, if you've purchased silver in any time in the last decade, you might have done okay on it. But it isn't generating cash, and a lot of the businesses that are super well valued, maybe they're stocks, and a lot of that's been different. There's a lot of stocks that are not profitable that have very high valuations, but the whole point is ideally or eventually they will be generating cash, and this is just sitting here, has a lot of value in some, whether it's like climate or other applications. Silver is much more industrial compared to gold, but it still is not generating any cash. So it just does how much can you sell it for? And you're locking up capital in a really illiquid form. Now, silver is probably more liquid, like a 10-ounce bar, versus something like a very collectible coin. But still, you're not going to be able to convert this into whatever other security or investment vehicle or experience you want right away. It's tough to find people who are going to accept this at the silver price. And then most dealerships, there's going to be a commission, or if you sell online, there's a lot of effort that goes into realizing the cash for it. So that's definitely a drawback. I think something like cash often gets, people say it's not the best, and stock, can often be converted pretty quickly, but silver definitely does not have the instant convertibility to cash or wide acceptance as something that can be traded with by everybody out there. I mean, if it's 1 in 1,000 people that are excited to use silver as legal tender, that's going to be really limiting in terms of who you can do business with and the utility of bringing it around. I think the con of silver as an investment, I mean, it's certainly appreciated nicely on a dollar term, but relative to things like stock, I think in some cases it's done quite well. But if you're buying, especially when it's been hyped up in the big upswings, the silver price is well below what it was post 2008, sort of in that 2011 time range. And I think that when you factor in, again, like all of the hits that you take and the premiums and the cuts that different people are generally able to get, silver as a pure investment hasn't performed great in the past. Maybe that means it's time for a rebound, though it has rebounded a bit in recent days. But I think a lot of the silver community, I would just be careful with this. This is something to be cognizant of. They almost always buy when it's going up and then sell as it comes down. And that's not really the best way to do it. I sort of like to think of it as something that's like totally out of the system or out of like dollar terms. I know that I was able to say, what percent my portfolio is in silver, but I sort of just enjoy the concept of having the physical possession. I think another thing to think about is that it can be seized by the government. I think this would not be very feasible, but they tried it before with gold in 1933. Now, I think that would be a pretty big announcement and would be met with a lot of backlash. And it wouldn't really be done these days because back then we were on a gold standard, and that sort of got suspended. Anyways, it was more like relevant to the currency, whereas silver, our dollars currently have zero ties to anything relating precious metals prices. Another thing to think about is that silver can be faked. I mean, right in front of us, we have Monarch Precious Metals. That's a pretty well-known precious metals company, but it's not even like a government-produced, whether it's 90% constitutional or junk silver, or like a 1-ounce bullion round. This is just a private issuer. I think we've got some different ones. I think this is like Jaeger. I mean, Engelhard is a lot more well-known, and, so that's a little bit of a different situation. But like Northwest Territorial Mint in Auburn, Washington, not something that I'm super familiar with. So I think that, it could be faked, and for all I know, I didn't test this when I purchased it. I bought it from a reputable source, but maybe it's just a nice sort of silver coating on something that is not silver inside of it. Certainly there's scams out there of people selling fake coins, whether it's a fake Morgan dollar or a fake bar. They're normally going to get rooted out, but it's not impossible that something like that could occur. You can also over allocate towards silver if you get too caught up. I don't think that you should ever be, and again, this is not investment advice, it's just entertainment, but it wouldn't make sense to have 100% of your portfolio in silver, or I would say half or a quarter. I mean, that seems really high as somewhat of an investment. Again, that's just sort of entertainment, something to think about, but I feel like people can get caught up in it because of like this community that exists around it online, maybe similar to a stock like Tesla, or an asset like Bitcoin. A lot of it can be hype, and like, what's the actual transaction value of this? What's the industrial value? What's the value as a store and a hedge against inflation? I think that there's great arguments to be made there. But it's not a good idea to just do it because it's like part of a community. I think that can sort of get things caught up in that versus like your average, consumer or industrial stocks. Like, there's probably less people who are like super excited about owning those names because of like a cult following. And not that like the silver cult following, so to speak, is like a super harmful thing. I think it's really fun and like a fun community. I enjoy like listening to some of those videos and getting involved, but I also think you want to be able to separate if you again are coming in from an investment or from like a price appreciation standpoint, versus like what are some fun interesting theories about inflation and how silver is linked to that. None of us really totally know the answer, and I think silver is a cool store of value, but it's always something that I bring up when I make these types of like downside videos. I think that you can struggle to purchase the right types of silver. I wouldn't say like, buying this, what's the right size silver bar. That doesn't always matter too much, but how are you going to be able to sell this stuff back to a refiner? Like, I don't think you should target like Star Rounds 0.5 ounce, I think, of 999 fine silver. I think that's sort of funny. Probably not much of a great investment thesis, and the silver, your average dealership will pay a lot less for this than like a 1-ounce government round or like a 10-ounce Engelhard bar or constitutional silver that can be traded at a multiple of face value. I think it's also difficult to transport in large quantities, gold or other precious metals, but I think like palladium, platinum will look like silver, and there's less authentication, and sort of less appetite among precious metals interested people for using those. They've never had a standard of platinum or palladium. I think that contributes to the strength of gold and silver. And again, there's the last one that I have on my list is far less acceptance as a form of money. So I think if I went and tried to sell this, I want to do some videos that are like asking people if they'd rather have $100 or a bar or an ounce of gold, say, or $100 or like 5 pounds of silver. Like, I think a lot of people would know the answer just on a pure value perspective, but if somebody came up to me and wanted to pay 2 troy ounces of silver monarch, even though I know the value of silver, I would probably want a discount just because it's like, well, I'd rather have the cash, in like a commerce setting, both on like a authenticity and like understanding of what it's worth and how I can, pay my employees then, or, realize it as a business transaction as opposed to like, getting 4.98 troy ounces of, what is it, Mooney metals, silver. I own this. I view it as 5 ounces essentially, but I don't think it's going to be feasible that everybody's going to know the dollar terms updating silver price, and that's why we have the dollar as cash. Maybe we get to a situation where we're just trading this stuff around, but I think that other things would step in, or our world would be so bad at that point, or in like such a tough spot where I guess silver could have some utility there, as it might in like some of the countries that are seeing hyperinflation, but it's just not as accepted as a form of money. So we'll see what happens. These are some cons. Again, I own what I consider to be quite a lot of silver, relative to, I don't have massive amounts of money like sitting in the bank or anything, but I always want to present both sides. So let me know if you agree. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. I've also got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can follow me there. TreasuretownYT.com is the main channel website. Definitely give that a visit. I've got a lot of information about me up there and the channel. CoinGrabBag.com as well currently redirects there, but it's some good opportunities for very fair grab bags, both made by me and other sellers. A lot of different options, so that's a good way to support. There's also TreasuretownCoins.com. In the future, my coin dealing operation will be done out of that website. CoinMeltPrice.com for updates on the melt prices of your coins, both US and world. A lot of resources in that website. And then CoinsMetalsCards.com being developed right now as a marketplace and news source for coins, metals, cards, and collectibles in general. So I'll see you on my future videos. Looking forward to seeing you there, and hope you have a good day.